Man, this is Deion Dawkins, man, and you're listening to The Scoop on OurScoop.com. You already know.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to The Scoop, OurScoop.com's weekly podcast. We're at episode 27 of our 10th season here on The Scoop. We've got a full house today. I'm OurScoop.com editor John DiCarlo. We're joined by assistant editor Kyle Gauss and the whole crew here, Johnny Swislak, Jason Yevis, Colin Schofield, and Ryan Mack. Have a pretty busy episode ahead for you guys. Tough weekend for both Adam Fisher and Diane Richardson and their respective basketball teams. Both lost over the weekend and have had a chance to try to stay in first place in the American Athletic Conference, but that has not been the case. Got some football roster additions to talk to you guys about, along with a couple of questions in the mailbag. So plenty of stuff to get to. Thanks for joining us for another episode. The Scoop, as always, brought to you by Greenspan and Greenspan Injury Lawyers. If you've been injured while on the road or the highway and the crash was someone else's fault, the insurance company is not going to be on your side. You need us, Temple Law grads, who will fight hard to get the compensation that you deserve. We only get paid if we win, so in Pennsylvania or New York, call us today at 215-261-7359. That's 215-261-7359. And you can find them on the web at greenspans-law.com, greenspans-law.com. Colin, Ryan, do you guys at all wish you were Eagles fans?
No, I don't. I'm very happy as a Denver Broncos fan.
But they might be on.
Oh God, what are you, 47 years old? How are you happy as a Denver Broncos fan?
I just adopted my dad's teams, Kyle. All right.
No, I'm not questioning why you are. I'm questioning why you're happy as a Denver Broncos
Because
fan.
we have
quarterback.
We got Bo Nix. That's all I need is Bo Nix.
I think quarterback is in quotations there.
Whoa. What's that supposed to mean?
I like Bo Nix.
I think he's fine. I mean,
I think the issue
you
is
got to build a heck of a roster around him.
That's it. I think the
got a
issue
heck
is
of a
this.
defense.
People think all it takes is a quarterback. Like, I'm sick of all the narrative over the last 48 hours of like, well, Jaden Daniels is 100% going to be in 7 of these over the next 10 years. You don't know that. You have no idea. Like, you got to build an entire roster around these teams.
Exactly.
Like, yeah. And then if you're the Eagles, you just do it better than anybody else.
Exactly.
Ryan, are you happy with Vrabel? Are you happy with the direction of your?
See, that's fine. Ryan's allowed to be happy with his fandom there.
Yeah. Honestly, I am. I was kind of skeptical at first. I felt like Gerard Mayo should have gotten next year, obviously, but like it kind of went off the rails towards the end of it. I am very, very happy with Drake May, who, if you guys don't know, was named to a Pro Bowl maybe about 45 minutes to an hour ago.
He's 7th all
because when I think Mike Vrabel, I think quarterback development. That's something he's really good at.
Yeah.
The only thing I'm skeptical is Josh McDaniels is back,
Yeah.
and I don't know how many 3rd and 15 screen passes to a halfback I can do anymore.
Josh McDaniel is the offensive coordinator version of Jimmy Butler in the sense that he leaves every place on bad terms. Every place he ever goes, except for New England, it's just bad terms. Like, it's horrible terms.
Room. Yeah.
And the difference would be like is if the Bulls just always welcome Jimmy Butler back. That would be Josh McDaniel. Like, you could just go out for a couple years, salt the earth, burn bridges, and then just come home, and they'll be fine.
Well,
that's where we're at.
Are we an NFL pod now? I think we are.
Let's do it. It's an undersaturated market, right? There's only a couple.
Yeah,
totally.
Pods out there. Johnny, what do we have for on or around this date? And are you going to try to silence your buddy Jason here, or is it going to be?
I'm hoping that this is the last. This is like the end of the Johnny Jason on or around this date because I am. This was my show. Declan handed it to me and entrusted me.
Sounds like the Barry Gibb talk show. This is my show.
It is. This is Declan handed this to me. It is mine, and I don't appreciate that this newbie hops on the pod and thinks that he can just insert himself into this.
Was there like a some sort of PDF that Declan bestowed upon you?
Like, I know, but there was no paperwork. It wasn't like an official document kind of thing, but it was unspoken that this was my show. This was my segment, and Jason hops on the pod, and in his first 3 episodes, he just thinks he can insert himself and say that we're co-hosts and that he's gonna silence me this episode.
I have a little something.
I think you basically just described like the second half of the last season of Succession. Like, it was supposed to be mine. We went through this, and instead these other people are trying to usurp me.
I'm just saying
I'm
I
cousin
did my
Greg.
time. I did
Yeah.
my time to
Yeah,
get
Kyle's
here.
definitely cousin Greg.
I'm cousin Greg.
Or I could also see Ryan being cousin Greg. Ryan, this is like a shorter, much shorter cousin Greg. Sorry, cousin Greg's like 6'7", dude.
Yeah, he's
You're-
oafish.
He's
And like
no,
I'm 6'6" for people that haven't met me. So like I'm
no,
close.
you're not. You're not. I don't know. Yeah, I
You
am.
said-
I'm,
you said
I'm
you had
picking up
something?
on like I'm the favorite son vibes, and
I mean,
I don't know.
I don't think I'm the favorite. I'm just saying I've been on this pod for like 2.5 years now.
Two
Like,
things.
okay.
Iron sharpens iron, and we're here to sharpen each other's tools. So if you're afraid,
Why are you bringing up a Stan quote? Stan's gone, John. Stan is gone.
Drayton quote, like literally hundreds of people said that before him.
But like,
Hundreds.
but
Yes.
this is a Temple podcast. So like when I think of like sharpened tools, like I think of Stan Drayton.
And you giggle like a 3-year-old.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. What do we have? What do we have? Lock in. Lock in. As you say to us,
It's time to lock
it's time
in.
to lock in. All right.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another
quick, can I-
edition.
can I-
Oh my god.
Sorry.
Oh my God.
Just when I said lock in, Colin, you can't. The people can't see this. Colin is literally like
Right.
rubbing his fingers together,
Yeah.
like he's like seriously stressed out. All right. Okay. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of On or Around This Date. I am your host, Johnny Zawizai. We got another great jam-packed section of On or Around This Date. Last week, we asked Colin if we wanted birthdays or events. The previous week, we asked Ryan. I'm not going to ask Jason for obvious reasons. Kyle, do you want to start with birthdays or events?
I think history would tell us that we start with birthdays.
Great choice. For the first person, on January 29th of 1954, this American TV host and producer was born. I'll give another hint. She was named the most influential woman in the world by Time magazine in 2005.
Oprah.
Correct.
There you go.
Good job, Kyle.
Harpo.
We're using the around section of On Around This Date for the final two birthdays. On January 30th of 1974, this movie actor was born in Wales. He earned an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor for his role in the movie The Fighter.
Oh,
Christian Bale.
yeah.
Correct.
Keep
Good
forgetting
job,
he's Welsh.
Ryan.
That's good.
What was
Christian Bale.
No,
Oh, okay.
He doesn't register to you as Welsh, but he is. He's Welsh.
Yeah.
Was also played Batman in the Dark Knight trilogy.
Johnny, give me your best Batman voice.
I am Batman.
Good.
I tried my best. I
That
tried.
sounds like when you ever see like the comedian Pete, what's his name, do him?
Davidson.
Yes.
Not Pete Davidson.
No,
Uh,
the short.
Pete Holmes.
guy.
Pete Holmes.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Johnny did an impression of Pete Holmes doing an impression of Christian Bale.
All right, moving on to the final birthday. On January 30th of 1882, this former U.S. president was born.
Sorry, what was the year? What was the year?
1882.
Oh, 1882. So he was
Kyle's
probably
good with this.
he was probably president right before FDR. Okay, so give me another hint.
He served as the editor-in-chief at the Harvard Crimson Daily paper and graduated from Harvard in 1903. After graduating from Harvard, he went to Columbia Law School.
Was it
Calvin
FDR?
College?
It was FDR.
Oh wow.
Oh, was that? Oh, okay. Oh, all right.
Ryan on fire right
Ryan
Yeah,
is
now.
on
that's
fire
good.
right now.
We're going to move on to events.
No, we're not. Because I have proof.
Oh,
I've been
gosh.
waiting my time. Listen, if you want to talk about time waited, I spent months of my life sleeping in the same room as Declan. And if you have slept in the same room as him, you can know that is not an easy task. Okay.
He's a snorer. Right?
He is a very loud.
Does this have anything to do with the scoop?
It's saying that I paid my dues as well. Okay. It may not have been, on this specific podcast, but I've worked to get here as well. So
All out. Johnny, I love you. I'm just this is
so continue with
everybody's
on around this
contributing.
date.
Johnny's so pissed off today.
Anyway,
Just let it happen. It's okay. This is fun.
to continue with on around this date, I'm your co-host, Jason Nieves. Once again, starting with on this date, this NBA head coach was born on January 28th, 1949, and won 5 NBA championships, forming a dynasty.
Pat Riley,
No,
Phil Jackson.
It's way too young. Or way too young for. Is it Steve Kerr?
no.
Oh,
1949.
Greg Popovich.
It is Greg
Oh,
Popovich.
okay.
Okay.
You guys got to step up.
I just unplugged his mic.
Once again, using the around this date portion, this famous composer was born on January
Beethoven.
27th, 1756.
Mozart.
It is
Mozart.
Mozart.
Yeah.
Those are my two. Johnny, back over to you as you plug in your mic.
All right, now we're going to move on to events. On January 29th of 1936, these two MLB Hall of Famers were among the first players to be selected to the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York.
Ruth and
Cobb?
Correct. Ruth and Cobb were the correct answer.
All right, there we go.
On January 29th of 1919, this constitutional amendment was ratified and went into effect the following year.
Was it women's suffrage?
No.
is it prohibition?
That is correct, Kyle.
Okay. Which
Prohibition.
is the 18th?
Yes, 18th Amendment.
AP
Kyle-
US history, my ass. Give me that. Give me that 5.
Kyle and Ryan continue to be on fire. On January 29th, 1845, this American author Edgar Allan Poe published this poem. It appeared in the New York Mirror.
The Raven?
Yes, The Raven.
Quoth the Raven, nevermore.
I think I've gone on a tangent on this podcast about Edgar Allan Poe before. About how
I
Probably-
believe you
gone
have.
on a
Yeah.
lot of tangents.
And that was on or around this day.
What if I told you that Jim Boeheim was an Edgar Allan Poe fan?
I don't, think
dislike
Kyle-
Edgar Allan Poe. I think I went on a tangent about how wild it was how he died, how they voted him to death.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That was this season, I think, right?
Probably they all blur together.
I'm done. I gave the ending like honor. This is on or around this day.
See, except you didn't, because
Oh,
I once again have 2 more. Johnny, just bear with me. Where's all the hostility? You know, why can't this be a co-hosting thing?
Why are
Good
we
answer,
why
good
are we
answer.
fighting, guys? This isn't like us.
Okay.
Who is the king that the woman came to him? The 2 women came and said, "This is my baby," and he said, "Okay, let's cut the baby in half then, and then that'll determine who the real mom is." God,
I'm
let's
not
see.
sure.
Is it King Solomon who cut baby?
I think it was Solomon, Kyle.
Yeah, King Solomon ordered the baby to be cut in half to determine which of the 2 women was its real mother. Which one of you? We're gonna cut this segment in half, so you both get half a segment, and then we can determine who is the true mother of this segment.
Oh. Johnny looks very pouty right now.
I'm not pouting. I'm furious. I feel like I've improved over the last couple weeks to
No
the
one
point where
said-
Johnny, will you consent to us cutting this in half?
I mean I wouldn't really like it, but if that's what the majority wants, I don't really have. a
Jay,
say.
would you consent to us cutting this in half?
I'm down with whatever.
See, because that means
So
he gets-
neither of you are the mother of this segment, because the true lover of this segment would rather say, "I would rather be whole," and the other person take it.
That's
than
what I
for this
said.
to
I
be
said
divided.
I wouldn't want to, but if the majority rules it, I don't have a say.
You see,
Ryan, you're now the host.
No,
of this.
no.
I
I refuse.
yeah, out of fear that Johnny might actually throw me out of John's office window, I decline.
No.
Is that the type of culture we want here at owlscoop.com? I don't know.
I never said I was going to do that. He said that.
But the fear is there.
I haven't done anything to.
Maybe we got to get Fitz Magnuson involved here.
Oh my God, not Fitzmagic.
Owlscoop.com HR lawyer. So
I have him on speed dial right now.
Okay. Back to just final 2 events here, Johnny. Try not to, throw Ryan out the window as he fears. On this day, January 28th, 1813, Jane Austen released this book or published this book.
where the sidewalk ends. No, I'm just kidding. That's Shel Silverstein. Jane Austen. This should be really obvious. Kyle, do you
Little
know?
Women.
No,
Is it? No, she didn't make Pride and Prejudice.
Did she?
No, is it Pride and
it
Prejudice?
is Pride and
There we
Prejudice.
go. Ryan's kind of cleaning up today.
Yeah, Ryan's doing well.
Working at Barnes Noble really does help with that one.
That's fair enough. Yeah.
Okay. And this is a little sad one, but January 28th, 1986.
Oh,
Wow.
wow. Again. Okay. I want to establish something. We don't do the day we record. Right? That's
Exactly.
like, I
Well, you
understand
do.
we're taking liberties with the on or around this date, but the general consensus is we start with the day this airs.
That's what.
What if we get it out later tonight, though?
I will not be able to get it out
Okay.
later tonight. I apologize.
All right. Well, that's
Fine. I'm just saying, I'm not angry at anybody. We're going to keep going with this. We can go for this, but I think that should be Johnny's playing from a different playbook than other people. So
Also, I think I know the answer to this, by the way. January 28th, 1986.
Yes,
Challenger.
it is a challenge.
Yeah.
I will say, Kyle, we have made exceptions in the past for like I think we made an exception for Muhammad Ali's birthday.
I just want everybody to. I want it to be an even playing field.
Exactly.
When,
I appreciate it.
I'm just like, yeah.
I
So
appreciate it that you're sticking
also,
up
I
for
just
me.
wanted
We've
that
come a long way, Kyle.
this is arguably our tightest timeline recording wise of the season, and we've wasted the first 22 minutes on or around the stadium.
Yeah.
Hey, we got some time to make some second half adjustments here. Let's talk first before we get into men's and women's hoops. Let's lead off with some football instead today. Talk about some players that the program announced yesterday. They announced 14 mid-year additions. Some of them were players who committed and signed back in December. Among that group, you've got 3 FCS corners and Jalen Castleberry, Omar Ibrahim, and Avery Powell, 2 FCS linebackers and Ty Davis and Willie Love. Then you've got 3 FBS transfers in Sam Houston State running back Jay Ducker, former UMass defensive tackle Aaron Beckwith, and then former Kentucky linebacker Javant Brown. So let's talk a little bit about, have some fun with this. Spring football, I can't say it's around the corner necessarily, but
Looming.
Yeah, looming sounds kind of negative, but
yeah,
looming. So let's talk a little bit about some of the guys that they announced yesterday, and this is the part of the season where we can kind of just try to project and predict here. Kyle, I'll start with you first. You've really been on top of a lot of this stuff. Obviously, they addressed, a real area of need, especially the defensive backfield. Obviously, if you're Casey Keeler, you have to hope that a lot of these guys are going to contribute. But are there a couple of names here that jump out to you where you say, okay, we're going to see in the spring practices that are available to us, we're going to see a couple of these guys flash? Or anybody that speaks to you where you say, yeah, these are guys that should make an instant impact right away?
Yeah, I think the two that stick out to me as like instant impact guys that are going to have to be relied on is, I think Jay Ducker you bring in to be your starting running back. Like, he's a guy that was the MAC freshman of the year in Northern Illinois, rushed for 1,400 yards or whatever. He rushed for 700-some yards last year. Sam Houston. I think Tyler Walker's offense is going to utilize multiple running backs, but I think Jay Ducker is probably the one that if you say, okay, that guy's like the bell cow, I would think right now, where they are right now, he is the guy. The other one for me on defense, I think Jalen Castleberry might have the best story in this incoming class. As a guy that went from a Division II player to an FCS walk-on to an FCS scholarship guy to an FCS all-conference guy and is now an FBS scholarship corner. And I think he's going to have to play a lot. And then just as far as the spring goes, I think you're going to see a lot of Anthony Chickett, the quarterback from Robert Morris, just because, as we reported, like Forrest Brock is retiring from football. He's moving on with his life. So just from a sheer number perspective, like the RMU transfer might just be the backup quarterback at this point.
The cornerbacks, you mentioned Castleberry, Omar Ibrahim, Avery Powell. Guys, any other names that jump out to you? I know a couple of you have, especially Ryan. You've talked to a couple of these guys. I think, well, I don't know. In today's college football, everybody has to contribute right away. And I think Everett Withers kind of put it eloquently. If you can redshirt a guy, great. But now, you don't really have that luxury, because if you redshirt a guy and somebody knows about him, you might lose him anyway. I know people are going to have their eye on Jet White. He's a guy coming in mid-year out of high school, but
crazy that he got dropped down to a 3-star, right?
I know nobody does it. I don't even care that we're speaking ill of the Rivals family here. You can just set your watch by it. It's so
if he had signed with UCF, he'd be a 4-star. I'll just say that.
Yeah, he was a 4. He is now Rivals knocked him down to a 3-star because he
not just 3-star, the lowest ranked 3-star you can be.
Yeah,
like a borderline 2-star, just because he signed with Temple. And
I'm sure that Rivals crew has evaluated him into
rigorously.
Thanks to just so stupid. Anyway, Ryan, any of these guys that you've had a chance to talk to Jet, you talked to Willie Love, any of these guys strike you as, again, we got to see him on the practice field? Anybody you think is going to have an instant impact and turn some heads in the spring here?
I don't know if he's gonna have an instant impact, but I am actually, after talking to him, I'm actually really interested to see how Willie does.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he was a high level FBS prospect,
Yeah.
Like people thought he was going to go to Power Four schools. He wouldn't really tell me which one, but he did allude to some. Then going down to Monmouth and being FCS, that kind of gave him, we were talking to me, gave him a chip on the shoulder.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I have to prove everyone wrong. Like, there's a reason why I'm here. Okay, it's a little bit different. So I'm kind of intrigued to see how he kind of makes that transition, being from Monmouth. And then coming up here, also just him being from Camden, like he talked about, that was a big reason why he wanted to come here.
Yeah.
And just being able to put on for families to the games, just people being able to see him. I'm actually really intrigued to see how he performs, honestly.
Yeah, interesting. Again, had a lot of big names involved in his recruitment early on. Again, it's not a rare thing now to see, for guys to see big offers dry up early on. But yeah, I mean, a guy that's going to have an opportunity to come in right away. And Kyle, we've got some tight end changes on the roster to talk about as well.
Yeah, I think this is kind of indicative of where the offense is going. You see guys like Reese Clark, who was always kind of more of like a hybrid, more athletic tight end. He's now just straight listed as a wide receiver on the roster, which is probably, like I said, an indication of what they think of him. And then maybe more interestingly is that you have a guy in Conlon Green who started at defensive tackle for most of his freshman year, is now switching over to the other side of the ball. So, I mean, when he was at Penn Trafford out in Western PA, he was a quarterback, so he's familiar about being on offense, but seems like a relatively new position. But it's a guy that's 6'4", 285. You probably assume he's going to lose a little bit of weight maybe to get a little more athletic, get down to maybe 265, 270. But I think they're just signaling that, hey, they're going to prefer bigger, bulkier tight ends in this offense.
I think you kind of already mentioned it with the defensive backs and the corners they brought in. Like, that's what I'm super interested to see. Like, that room kind of lost a bunch of guys who played a lot of snaps in the secondary, and I mean, bringing in the 3 transfers and Jet White, I think is going to set up to be really interesting sort of secondary in the spring, and then seeing how they kind of continue to build that into next season. I mean, like you said, Jalen Castleberry looks really good. Avery Powell, I think, is going to look really good. I'm excited to see him. Omar Ibrahim, Jet White, you guys have touched on. I mean, I think those are kind of the guys for me. I'm really excited to see how those corners come in and make an impact in a room where it kind of feels like, outside of Osweke, who's back for his 5th year, kind of feels like there's a lot of snaps open to be taken.
I mentioned in the article today they've added a walk-on kicker and punter in Darren Wu, another South Jersey guy, was at Lafayette and then transferred in. Temple wasn't on the roster this year. I'd be lying if I said I'd poured over Darren Wu film. Are we going to assume, and we'll talk about this throughout the next several weeks, that there's going to be another influx of roster movement after spring ball? I think I asked this question about a different position before. Is the starting place kicker on the roster right now?
I honestly think Carl Harden has a shot. Like Darren Wu for Lafayette, I mean, he handled kickoff duties for Lafayette the 1 year he was there. But if we go back prior to Max Trujillo coming here, Carl Harden took over that kickoff job spot that 2023 season. He has legitimate FBS legs. So I don't know if it was intentional of, hey, let's not bring in a scholarship kicker in the spring just to see what we have. And then maybe Harden kind of walks away with that and you get an opportunity, or what. But I think there's a chance Carl Harden could be a kicker at this level.
Stay tuned for next week's episode. We've got a special guest who will be able to give you some direct insight into the program. You guys won't want to miss.
This is like how every week on New Heights they tease that Taylor Swift's going to be on the podcast, and she never is. So let's just tease that Taylor Swift is our special guest next week.
If we actually got Taylor Swift, no one else is interviewing her but you, right?
Yeah, no, yeah, just me. That's 100% me. I would like pay somebody to sabotage your mics too. That just like, unfortunately, like I don't know what's going on in their room. They must have a bad connection. Let's just you and I talk, Taylor. And the cameras aren't even here.
You want to tell them what Music Video Monday is?
No.
Or was?
No.
No,
don't make that more nefarious than it was. That was just a couple guys.
I wasn't trying to make it nefarious.
Enjoying brewskis, enjoying music videos. I legitimately love music videos. Like I think it's a lost art. I legitimately love them. And I used to, just sit and just watch them for a couple hours every Monday.
Yeah.
Enjoy a 6-pack from the bottle shop.
Yeah. Shout out to the bottle shop. Let's move on to talk about this Temple men's basketball team. After beating the 18th ranked program in the country at the time, Memphis, and grabbing a tie of first place in the conference standings, Temple since then has gone 0-2 on its Texas road trip. Lost to North Texas. We talked about that last week. And then they lost at UTSA on Saturday. We have not yet talked about that. In that 88-79 loss at UTSA on Saturday, Temple fell behind by as many as 16 points. Came back to tie the game in the second half. They just could never, ever get past that. They couldn't take the lead. Not great defensively. 16 turnovers. Raekwon Horton and Primo Spears had 20 points apiece. Damari Monsanto just was a monster from 3, 5 of 8 from 3. Jamal Mashburn had 20. Steve Settle had 18. Zion Stanford had 17 points. Elijah Gray was out again. Like we said in last week's podcast, would have been a minor miracle to see him in the lineup. Kyle, you weren't on last week, but we talked about the fact that even though they had beaten Memphis, a lot of goodwill there, still not much was going to change. They weren't going to, vault into the at-large conversation. I talked about the tweet that I shared about the field of 64, and at the time they're having some fun with this. They're projecting Temple as the conference winner and Memphis as an at-large team. So not much has changed, but the North Texas loss, tough defensive game. It's one game, but they did not look good against UTSA. For Kyle, and we can go around the horn here. What has gone wrong with this team over the last couple of games? You're going to have ups and downs in conference play, but I particularly thought they did not play a good basketball game at UTSA on Saturday.
Yeah, the UTSA one. Sorry, go around the horn. I'm going to go first. UTSA one, particularly a little concerning because I think defense is the issue, right? Like it's a weird environment. Like it's one of the weirdest basketball arenas in Division 1 to play down there in San Antonio. Like you're playing at basically McGonigal down in San Antonio.
Yeah, with like the maps in the background. Yeah.
Yeah, it's strange. But like offensively, like they were fine. Like they shot like a decent percentage. Like they were efficient. Like it wasn't great, but like shooting 45% is going to win you most games in college basketball. So like that's not concerning to me. It's just the defensive lapses are strange. I don't know if that's just it's still a team that's gelling and going on a road trip to Texas and blah blah blah. Going over 2 is not ideal. Like I don't know. But yeah, that one, if you were in the conversation for an at-large bid, that's almost like a resume killer because you went down there and right now that's a quad 3 loss. It's probably going to be a quad 4 loss. So for it to kind of trend that way was jarring. I think most people would have signed off or been okay with a 1-1 road trip in that situation. Going over 2 is kind of almost inexcusable.
Giving up a layup right before the end of the first half when you have a foul to give, I don't understand that. I don't know if that's just something that is communicated to the team. They just didn't execute it, but it's not the first time that we've seen that happen. I don't know why they seem hesitant to do that, but I know they're kind of another thing that stands out to me too. Again, I'm not breaking any news here, and they're kind of in some ways the same player. They're very similar, Zion Stanford and Jamal Mashburn Jr., but they don't, when they're on the floor together at the same time, again, their numbers are fine. They don't really seem to look for each other all that much. And I know that either one of them could try to be better facilitators, but I don't know, just kind of a disjointed game. But again, I agree with you, Kyle. Defensively, you know who the shooters are. You didn't get out on them. Now, Monsanto hit a couple of shots that were contested. You're like, okay, where did he pull that out from? But again, he's a good shooter, but
yeah, and like UTSA is like a top 25 team in 3-pointers. Like that's what they do. And that first half, it was just they all went in. Like they really were making some absurd shots.
For me, I think a lot of it, like you mentioned, Kyle, it is the defense that's the biggest worry. I also think like Elijah Gray being out does more than a lot of people let on.
Yeah.
Like I think even just going back to the Memphis game before he got hurt and had to leave, like he was a huge defensive factor down low, and it helped Baba Tunde. Like he's great, like defensively at times, but having Mo Keita like right behind him, I think is. I mean, I know Mo only played 3 minutes against UTSA, but I still think like Baba and Elijah work well off of each other. Yeah. Like it keeps that same consistency, giving Baba a break, and Elijah can come in off the bench and still contribute defensively. I think with Elijah out, it kind of hinders the way the defense flows. So I think that's a big issue. And like you mentioned, John, I mean, I think Jamal and Zion on the floor at the same time, like their stats look fine when you look at it, but when you actually watch the game, I think it hurts the offense a little bit more than you realize.
Kind of going on top of that, John, it feels like when both Mash and Zion are on the floor, obviously don't look for each other. It's just hard for them, like kind of to coexist on the court at the same time. They're both 2 ball dominant scorers, and yes, Zion had 4 assists, and that's something that Fisher said that he's working on. But it just doesn't always feel like they can work out together. I think we said this after that North Texas losses. Whenever they have players scoring, it's never at the same time.
Yeah.
They have four players on this team are scoring double digits in Mash, Quante, Steve, and Zion. But it never really feels like when one person is on, and someone else can be. Like Mash is usually on for the entire game, but he does it in spurts. Zion has it in spurts. Quante will have his spurts, and then Steve is like a sneakily like we'll get like 10 or 12 during a game. And as good as that is, it's not always gonna help you. You have to be able to coexist together. I feel like the best lineup sometimes is when Jamal isn't on the court at the same time as Zion. It's like usually that lineup when it's like Shane, Quante, and Jamal. That really feels like those guards kind of mesh together the best. That's kind of something I've noticed, not just in this game, but kind of throughout the course of the season.
Maybe it's just bad luck that this staff recruited the 2 players in 2025 that like mid-range shots.
No,
Like-
it's you make a great point. Yeah, I mean it's on one hand it's a lost art and it's good that they can do that. I mean, if at the beginning of the season you say you got a couple guys on the roster here that are really gonna like embrace the mid-range game, the more traditional older basketball fans, but gosh, it's great. They're not just chucking threes, but it's it's an interesting point. Charlotte, they got to win this game at the Leocore Center Wednesday night. 8-12 overall, 1-6 in the American. They got a couple good players. Nick Graves is a pretty good guard. Their leading scorer is averaging a little more than 16 points, 4 rebounds, and almost 3 assists per game. Been at Charlotte all 3 seasons, which is kind of a rarity these days. Giancarlo Rosado, another former FAU guy who's blossoming somewhere else. He's averaging 11.6 points per game, team high 6.4 rebounds. Again, at FAU the last 4 seasons, his production has ticked up since coming to Charlotte. But otherwise, I mean, they're the second worst scoring offense in the American. They're a middle of the pack defensive team. They're the worst shooting team in the league, the second worst in the conference in field goal percentage defense. Getting the indication that Elijah Gray might be back for this game, we shall see. So, but I mean, if they lose this game, they've got some bigger problems to address. We'll see. Barring any sort of developments that pop up, if we get to Leocore Center tomorrow and someone's not on the floor and there's a major injury. Other than that, Temple should and needs to win this game.
Charlotte lost to the Fighting Rod Stricklands at home.
The Fighting Rod Stricklands. Yeah.
Gotta win that game.
Yeah, absolutely. Going over to the women's side, Diane Richardson's Temple women's basketball team lost 62-60 at home to Tulane. You guys have talked nonstop throughout the year about there's just always one quarter that that just does them in. This time, right out of the gate, they missed 15 of their first 18 shots. Tiara East, Temple's leading scorer, finished with just 6 points. Season worst, 2 of 19 shooting, including 2 of 7 from deep. Her 6 points that tied a season low. Jay, you were there covering the game for us. Were these contested shots she was missing, or just some open looks? A little bit of both. I mean, again, we've talked about at length about the equal opportunity offense, how other people can pick up the slack. But in a game after she had kind of like, I don't want to say reemerged, but it played a good game. 2 of 19 is 2 of 19. But tell us about some of these looks. Tulane really locked down on her, or was she just missing some uncharacteristic open looks?
I think it's a combination of both, and I think Diane Richardson summed it up perfectly when we asked her about it in the presser, and she said it was like she rushed some of her shots, but also the spacing and the movement on the court also throws off a lot because people aren't moving, and you see that she feels like she has to take these shots as a result, which obviously they're not falling and she keeps shooting, but at the same time I do feel like at times it was sort of like she was trying, like once she got herself in a hole, she was trying to prove like to her teammates or herself that she could get out of it, and as a result you see her be more aggressive, and which usually works, but I think when she's being more aggressive, there's always options to kick it out. And I think there's many times where me and Johnny were talking, we're like, oh, like T-Mac's open in the corner when T is driving. And I think that at the end of the day is what kind of cost them, because as much as she has the opportunity to take over games, I think they're going to target her as a leading scorer on this team. And I think what you can do distributing the ball from that is what kind of makes or breaks her performance at times.
I mean, I completely agree with you, Jason. I mean, the way, like, when we asked, like, even when we asked T-Mac about like what went wrong with the offense, and not even specifically just TR, just in general in the first quarter, she said it was the lack of communication and the lack of movement, which probably isn't a great thing to be saying at this part in the season, the lack of communication, lack of movement. I mean, maybe it's a factor of like I mean, I don't know this, but I mean, we're going to talk about, this road trip that they have coming up is
A big
huge
one.
for their season. I mean, maybe you overlook Tulane a little bit and you're
Although they
focused on the road
shouldn't,
trip.
right? 'Cause Tulane's not.
I mean,
top
Tulane,
liver, yeah.
Tulane. I mean, they were fifth in the conference going into it. I mean,
Yeah.
you're going up against the two top teams. I'm not saying that's the case, but
Mhm.
maybe, I mean, maybe that, like, because Diane Richardson said she told them she thought they were asleep in the first quarter with how bad they were playing. I mean, it
Yeah.
was, when it comes to just Tiara East, you hit it on the nose, Jason. It feels like when she's not knocking down shots early, she forces things. She doesn't play the way that she normally does when Temple's playing well, where it's
Mhm.
you play in transition, you drive, and if something's not there wide open, you kick it out.
Mhm.
And with the way that Tariana Gary was shooting, especially late in the game, there were a couple times where TR East drove and took a contested layup or took a contested jumper that, I mean, Tariana Gary would be wide open in the corner. She had previously just knocked down like 3 threes in a row, and you're taking the jump shot instead of passing it to Tariana when you got to give it to the hot hand at that point. Like, I understand the thought process of, like, I'm gonna shoot my way out of this. Like, I'm the leader. Like, I think I can get my way out of this and get my team to the win and come back. But she was just forcing stuff that just didn't work, and I think it hindered the rest of the offense. I mean, you take out TR East's shots, and the rest of the team shoots like 42% through the
Yeah.
game. So, like, it was just a frustrating loss for them because it was so uncharacteristic of what we had seen previously.
What about the look at the end of the game? Was it a good look? It just missed.
Not at all. And I think Tulane executed it really well at the end of the game, where they know that Temple is going to want to get a shot up and like get into an offense of some sort. So they foul, cutting down the time, and as a result, they don't have much time to get a shot up at the end. So it's just a deep three by Tierra. But once again, Diane Richardson talks about it after the game, and it's like, okay, like, they're going to foul you in this moment, get a shot up. And I think once again, just leaning on the communication and the lack of just organization, which is a bit concerning at this point in the season when you're trying to make a big run in conference play. It is concerning, but once again, I think potentially it's just one of those games where it's a mental lapse. You're probably looking ahead to a tougher 2-game stretch, and you kind of overlook Tulane.
I agree with both of you guys with like overlooking Tulane. My only thing about it is this Tulane team is nearly the exact same as what it was last
Yeah.
year. And this is a team that, okay, you beat them by 20 in New Orleans last year in that first game. Tulane then played you guys close at the Liacouras Center before Temple was able to like pull away. Then they took you 3 overtimes to the American Athletic Conference tournament.
Yeah.
Like, that this team not like has your number, but plays you guys tough. You have a chance to kind of build your lead in being in second in the American Athletic Conference with the win. I don't think you can like sleepwalk going into a game like that. That's like that was kind of my one thing.
Yeah.
It's like this is like the kind of like a carbon copy of it. I know Temple isn't the exact same team, but like still.
A big 2-game stretch coming up for the Owls. Arguably their biggest moment of the season to date. North Texas is second in the conference standings at 7-1, and then UTSA 8-0 in the league. So this will be a really, really big test coming up. Before we hop into the mailbag, another weekly tip from our friend Mike Greenspan. Again, he wants to keep you safe on the roads. If you need an injury lawyer, he's your guy. So here is Mike's weekly tip for staying safe as a driver.
As winter continues to pound the Northeast, it's very important to remember, if your car is covered with snow, clean it before you get on the road. How many times have we been on the road and car in front of us is covered with snow, the snow is blowing on our windshield? It's unsafe. Clear that car, make sure it's safe for everyone. Go Owls.
Let's jump over to the mailbag to close things out. 3 questions in the mailbag that I can see so far. The first one comes from the screen named Matt Deebs. Anything else expected for signing day? He's talking about football here, other than what's been reported here. Most of the offers going out look to be for 2026, and there will be portal churn after the spring. Kyle, anything that they got a visitor coming up, right? But any
Yeah,
seeing
so
the
I'm
horizon?
the visitor Troy Cunningham, defensive tackle from Western PA. You're starting to see, just based upon Twitter action, that this staff has a bit more connections to Western PA and maybe Eastern Ohio than the previous staff. So you're starting to see them kind of recruit that area that, frankly, they haven't really recruited since, I'd say, Rod Carey, and maybe before that, like maybe when Adam DeMichael was on staff, like they'd kind of recruit out there. But my understanding from what I've talked to a couple of people is that the spring roster, like, shocker, we're 2 weeks into the semester, the spring roster is pretty much set, right? Like that is what it is. Right now they're at what, 73 scholarship guys at this point. This weekend, I'm expecting a handful of visitors, including Troy Cunningham. I think they're all high school kids. It's not a huge list. And when I do get more concrete names, obviously you can find that out on owlscoop.com. But then I think this is kind of just is what it is for the next couple weeks, months. And then you fill out that roster almost exclusively with transfer portal people in the late spring and summer.
After the spring. Yeah. Next question here comes with screen name Hal the Owl. Apologies if this was already addressed, but could someone detail the Jameel Brown situation? What is the status for the remainder of the season, etc.? Nothing has been announced here. The last time Adam was asked about it, he just said, we're supporting him as best as we can. But again, dealing with some personal stuff off the court at this point, I would be completely shocked if he plays again this season. I think he's going to be a medical red shirt. What's the status for the remainder of the season, et cetera? Look, I mean, I don't put a guarantee on anybody returning to any program now in college basketball. Would love to see him come back. I think he's a great young man, but yeah, I think he's almost positively going to be a medical red shirt. Last question here from JHG722 is the screen name for one of our longtime subscribers to close things out. I know I'm a minute late after the deadline. Fortunately, JHG, we got you covered here. But what's the plan at kicker? We talked about this a little earlier, but happy to talk about it again. I saw you mention the guy from Lafayette, but it seems like we should find a transfer kicker with some track record like Maddox Trujillo had. So again, heard Kyle mentioned it before. Carl Harden looked pretty good on kickoffs, but again, I wouldn't rule out them looking at a kicker, but we'll see.
Yeah. And I also think you'd be lying to yourself if anybody thought when they signed Max Trujillo in January, December of last recruiting cycle that they knew they were going to bring in a guy that was going to hit a 64-yarder.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, he had some success at the FCS level and like that, but like a lot of this is just like you're kind of hoping against hope. But yeah, I mean, I think Temple will be able to market itself to transfer portal guys as look what we're doing, look what we did. But yeah, I think Carl Harden will get the first whack at it this spring.
Yeah. Yeah. So a lot of position battles to watch in the spring. As soon as we get, and we could be not a super long way off from this, but once we get the schedule for media availability, which coaches are going to be available, we'll have to see how KC does it, if it's any different than Stan, if he's the type of guy that likes to make his assistants available a lot in the spring. We'll find out sooner rather than later. Pass that along to you guys again. We're going to have a great guest on you. We're going to have a great guest for you guys.
But he might be on you.
Have a great guest for you guys for next week's show. Talk a lot of great Temple football, so stay tuned. Johnny and Jay hopefully can get along a little bit better. I do think it's hilarious that you guys are at each other's throats, and then when we talk women's hoops, Johnny's like, Jake, it's an amazing point. Perhaps the best thing I've ever heard of.
It's a duality of man right there.
Yeah.
I'd love to see.
I respect it so much.
Yeah.
It's all for the love of the game at the end of the day.
Exactly.
We act like two legends can't coexist.
Yeah.
Come on, guys.
You guys are going to build each other up. Or this whole thing will crumble underneath the weight of it.
Yeah.
Either way, I'm here for it.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining us for another episode of The Scoop. We'll talk to you next week.